All right. Well, here we are. Really excited to have this conversation. I've seen some of the things that Tennis Australia have cooking, and I've thought to myself, wow, I want to find out more about this. And so, very thankful to have you with us, and would love for you to introduce yourself, and then we'll kind of dive in and talk about some of the great things that you're doing in Web3 and the multiverse and the metaverse. Marvel got in my head, everybody.
Hey Ian, thanks for having me. So my name's Ridley Plummer. I lead our metaverse and NFT strategy for Tennis Australia and the Australian Open. We've had a huge 6 months in the space. We led into AO22 with some lofty expectations of what we believed we could do and achieve in the space of metaverse and NFTs. And fortunately, we came up with a couple of brilliant partnerships, collaborations, and ideas, which took us into Decentraland for AO22 and really extended our objective of becoming the world's most accessible sports and entertainment event by basically putting anyone, anywhere in the Australian Open precinct and giving them an opportunity to engage with other consumers or play games in that space, collect items in that space, and enjoy all the aspects of what is the Happy Slam and summer in Melbourne.
So for those that don't know, give us some context. How big is this Tennis Australia Open? How many days does it last? How large of a production is this? And then we'll get into how do you bring something of that size and scale it across the Decentralands and all the different spaces, right, in the future. And so, but we'll start with the physical. Like, how big is this event? I don't know that if many people that are coming to the event have full context for how large this has become.
Yeah, that's a great point. That a lot of people necessarily playing in the NFT crypto Web3 space may not necessarily, we don't want to obviously generalize, but may not necessarily be sports fans some of the time. So this was a really project of fan acquisition in a way, and taking our event to new fan engagement and new fans that may not otherwise be too familiar with us. So the Australian Open is 14 days of tennis in Melbourne. Pre-pandemic, our visitation was around 750 to 800,000 people per year, with the biggest day in that being the middle Saturday, which had around 90,000 people alone. So the precinct in Melbourne is about 1.5 kilometres long. So what's that, around a mile long for our US friends. And it spans essentially from what we would call the CBD, so Flinders Street Station, right through to Richmond. And that whole Olympic Park precinct gets turned into what we refer to as a festival of sports and entertainment. So we've got tennis, we've got retail shopping in there, we've got amazing food and beverage, we've got kids theme parks and facilities for kids. Then we've got a huge live music stage. So I guess to the second part of your question, transposing this huge facility that a lot of it is built temporarily for the tennis event or for the Australian Open, transposing that whole facility into Decentraland was no mediocre task, that's for sure. So we were incredibly fortunate that our partner at Vegas City in Decentraland has an unbelievable build team, and we were able to provide them with photographs, videos, drone footage, site maps, 3D files, and then everything in between, and basically package that up for them and say, this is what the Australian Open looks like in reality. Let's go and make that a reality in Decentraland, if you like. And then I think what was important to us as well was that we modeled our in real life experience in Decentraland as well. So the in real life experience is, how do we get people to come back 2, 3, 4 times to the event? So if they come on day one with their family and they go to the kids' ballpark and they have some fun and everyone's exhausted by 2 p.m. and they don't actually see any tennis or get any shopping done, then the parents go, hey, we missed out on all the great things that we want to come back to the event for. Let's get some tickets and come back on Tuesday night and we'll have dinner at a restaurant, we'll drink some champagne, we'll go and sit in Rod Laver Arena and watch the tennis. And then they go, hey, that was great, but now we want to come back with our friends and have a couple of beers or a couple of wine on Grand Slam Oval and maybe a bit of Saturday or Sunday, and we'll go and see some music. And so all of a sudden we've created these moments in time for people to come back and visit us on multiple occasions. So it was really important that we created that in Decentraland as well through gamification, engagement, collectibles, NFTs, wearables, and utilization of our archive footage and like media rights footage that we have 50 years of through Tennis Australia and the Australian Open. So every time someone came back into Decentraland and went to a big screen or giant screen, they saw something new every time. They never saw the same thing twice, which was really important to us.
So besides this incredible event, and it's become so large, you also have 50 years of archive footage. So you're not just thinking about how do we do this large scale sporting event that in many ways is a big part of an experience for people. It's multiple days, and bring this into Decentraland so people can experience it there. But then how do you also take advantage of all this content that people probably haven't seen? And how does that play into the development and the ambition of what the space ends up becoming in Web3?
Yeah, so I guess there's a couple of ways that we look at that. And one is the fan engagement piece, and the way that we used that in Decentraland was creating almost a theme of decades. So every 2 days, we progressed through a new decade. So we went 70s, 80s, 90s, noughties, teens, 20s, however we want to describe that. That went throughout the tournament. So each bracket of a decade, we actually pushed out a different collection. So that would be wearables that looked like they were designed from the 70s or 80s or 90s, and then showing that archive footage from the 70s, 80s, 90s at the same time. We then flip on to the collectible and NFT side of things, and we talk about, okay, we have all this unbelievable footage in the can from 50 years gone by. How do we actually utilize that going forward? And this is actually a really good segue to talk about our NFT project that we ended up doing down the track. So one of the challenges with the tennis fraternity, unlike a lot of other sporting bodies, is that the tennis fraternity is quite fragmented. So there's not really a governing body like there is an NBA Players Association or an AFL Players Association that makes decisions on behalf of the players. So in the tennis world, you've got the ITF, the ATP, the WTA, then you've got the 4 Grand Slams, and then you've got 500 to 1,000 players sitting underneath there. And this guy's managed by his mother, this girl's managed by her brother, this guy's managed by IMG, and it's incredibly fragmented in the sense that no one's there making a holistic decision for all of the players. So when we actually modeled what an NFT collection could look like, we couldn't do it with the players because it would have been a logistical nightmare and an administrative nightmare to get all of those individual players to sign off their IP rights. So when we sort of got to the drawing board and said, hey, what is this collection that we want to create and put out to market, we really had to scrub the players off the list pretty early. And that, in a way, was a bit of a blessing because it meant we had to get incredibly creative and think about the assets that we have at our disposal, and how we could utilize those assets in a way that meant something to the Web3 consumer, but also meant something to our everyday fans who love tennis. And then so we kind of created this mixed blend of artwork, sport, data, technology, and spread it through live time over the 14 days of the event. And that's how we came up with the AO Art Ball concept.
I think it's going to be really interesting to see how many incredible and diverse NFT projects there are in the sports industry at NFT.NYC in June. I was just talking with John Costner, and when he was our first and only sports NFT guy when we started the event 4 years ago. And now, as you and I are talking about, there's a whole day, and the stage is going to be all sports stuff. So I imagine you're going to be around a lot of your peers that are doing really fun and amazing things. What is inspiring you about what can be in the metaverse and in Web3 regarding Tennis Australia and all similar events of that size and scale?
Yeah, I think it's really exciting to see what people are doing and how far people are pushing the boat out in this space, because we are really in an exploration of innovation and technology right now. I think we're in still the first instance where there's only very small uptake in the general community. There's still only very small understanding of how Web3 technology can change the face of whether it be sporting events or music events or fan engagement as well. So for me, it's I guess about seeing who's really pushing the boundaries in that space, because we've kind of set the bar way up here at the moment, and we've got a couple of things in our back pockets that we're working on that push that a little bit further again. But I'm keen to see that, what are people thinking about the use of data and technology and sport and art, and how they're going about blending all that together. Because I think what we've seen over the in the NFT space over the last couple of years is lots of collections that find one of those pillars, and it might be artwork, or it might be data, or it might be technology, or it might be sport. And how a project can exist only against one of those pillars now, I'm not sure. I think projects need to be stretching across at least 2 or 3 or 4 or maybe more of those pillars to actually engage with the community, because as we talk about that exploration in innovation and technology, you need to be incredibly creative. And I think we're really fortunate in this space that creativity is really only limited by your imagination, because we've got this wonderful world of technology and developers that are really pushing hard at creating things that are completely unique. And if you have an idea, someone will be able to make it using the technology we have at our hands. So that's really exciting.
Yes, it absolutely is. You'll be speaking about how NFTs, Web3, metaverse, this whole decentralized world are changing the face of sport through fan engagement and new audience segments. Any thoughts you want to share with us before you and I wrap our conversation on that topic and what you hope to share with the folks at our event in June?
Yeah, it's a big topic, isn't it? There's a lot of aspects to that. So the metaverse, I think, is an important play in this space, and it's important because it allows us to acquire new fans in a way. There's a whole other audience out there that is engaging with events online. They're not necessarily coming to the event in real life, but if we can take a little bit of what we create in real life and give that to them wherever they are in the world, that's what we're aiming to do. It's so hard to get to Melbourne in normal times, let alone in COVID times and with challenges around travel and whatnot, that if we can take our event to someone else instead of bringing them to our event, then that's a great opportunity for us to engage with a new fan segment as well. Similarly with NFTs and collectibles, I think over the next year or two, this becomes a really important conversation around how we broach ticketing, how we broach access to precincts and upgrades and utilize the technology, allowing people to buy experiences through use of NFTs and collectibles or tokens, whatever that happens to be. As I mentioned earlier, we're still in an exploratory phase, and the adoption of this technology is not by any stretch to the masses yet. So how do we then educate our core consumers on what's coming in the future and how it will benefit them ultimately? So I think we see things like the uptake of QR codes when COVID hit, and the adaptation of vaccine certificates into your phone, or people using credit cards within their phones or their watches. this is a migration of technology that took a long time. Like 20 years ago, we were using credit cards and putting them in those click-clack machines and creating a carbon copy piece of paper and then taking it to the bank. It took us 20 years to improve the technology to get from there to where we are now. And now it's in your watch. That's got to happen in the next 2 or 3 years with Web3 and NFT, that we actually educate the core fans on what it's going to mean for them in the future and how they can benefit from it as well.
Well, I think that's the most exciting thing for the entire sport industry. What does this mean for the fans? Is there anything that has the type of excitement, enthusiasm, passion, heartbreak, victory, defeat as a fan of a sport? And it is such a powerful part of our culture. So I think that, yes, things are going to accelerate quickly. I also feel very confident that it's you and the folks like you that are building this infrastructure out that will draw the masses into what we call Web3, because they're going to be motivated to do it because they want that much more engagement with the player, with the team, with the league. So thank you for being a part of this conversation with me. I look forward to spending time with you next month in Times Square.
Likewise, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And everybody have a fantastic weekend. And if you're watching this live, thank you for your attention. Be back again with another one of these conversations.